A billionaire deal was about to close. A black woman CEO walked into a bank to approve the final transfer. But when the teller looked at her ID, he threw it on the floor. What happened next? It didn't just cost him his job. It cost the bank $2 billion. Would you like alternate hooks in different tones, dramatic, mysterious, inspirational, etc., or one written specifically for YouTube Shorts/Reels too? Ask ChatGPT. T was a crisp Monday morning in downtown Atlanta. The sky was clear, the traffic unusually calm, and the day held promise. For Dr. Vanessa Mitchell, the CEO of a rising tech empire valued in the hundreds of millions, it was supposed to be a routine business errand, something that would take no more than 15 minutes. She was dressed sharply in a navy blue blazer, a silk blouse, and neatly tailored trousers. Her black heels clicked against the bank's marble floor as she walked in, confident and composed. Her company had just finalized a historic $2 billion partnership with a European financial technology firm, and all that remained was a final wire transfer to complete the agreement. It wasn't just business, it was legacy. She was greeted by the bank's usual ambient silence and the faint hum of the AC. Nothing felt out of place. She had banked here for years, her accounts in excellent standing, and her face and name well known to several branch managers. But today was different. She approached the counter where a young male teller, new to her, sat. She smiled politely, opened her sleek black handbag, and handed over her driver's license and a company authorization letter. "I'm here to process a high-value business transfer," she said. "The information should already be on file. I just need to authorize it in person." The teller glanced at her ID, then at her face, then back at the ID again. His eyes narrowed. His body language shifted, subtle but noticeable. He didn't return her smile. Instead, his lips pressed into a thin line. There was a pause. Then, without a word, he held her ID between two fingers and let it fall. It hit the floor with a soft but sharp clack, landing face down on the cold, polished tile. For a second, Vanessa didn't move. Neither did he. The action was so abrupt, so unnecessary, that her mind couldn't fully register it. Did he just— "Excuse me," she said quietly, blinking in disbelief. The teller shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "That doesn't look like you," he said, his tone flat, almost accusing. "We get a lot of fake IDs in here." A murmur went through the line behind her, but no one stepped in. Vanessa looked around. A middle-aged man in a gray suit glanced up from his phone. An elderly woman in the next line gave a slight frown. But no one said anything. With grace and control, Vanessa bent down, picked up her ID, and set it gently back on the counter. "I can assure you," she said evenly, "this is a valid government-issued ID, and I am who I say I am." Still, he didn't reach for it. He looked past her shoulder, as if already deciding she was a problem. "I'll need you to step aside while I get this verified," he said, loud enough for others to hear. Security protocol. Security protocol? Vanessa had just attended a conference as the keynote speaker. She had been featured on Forbes 40 Under 40. She had built her company from scratch while others doubted her every step. And now, she was being treated like a threat. She took a deep breath. Her heart was pounding, but her voice stayed calm. "I'd like to speak to your manager," she said. "Now!" But the teller didn't budge. Instead, he tapped something on his keyboard and pointed toward a seating area. "You can wait over there. I'll let someone know." No apology. No respect. Just dismissal. Vanessa stepped aside, heels echoing as she moved to the waiting bench. Each second felt like a slow burn. A silent anger simmered beneath her skin. Not just because of the ID, but because she knew this wasn't just about suspicion. This was about perception. Would he have done the same if she were a white man in a tailored suit? Would her ID have been tossed like trash? Would she have been told to wait for verification if her skin tone had been a few shades lighter? She'd faced this before. In meetings, in airport lounges, in boardrooms where she was assumed to be the assistant, not the CEO. But this time it was different. Because now, she wasn't just a successful businesswoman. She was the linchpin in a global business deal. And now, that deal was at risk. All because a bank teller couldn't recognize power when it came in a form he didn't expect. She sat in silence, watching the clock, calculating the cost of this moment, not just to her pride, but to the future she had built. And deep inside, a decision was forming. This wasn't just about a dropped ID. It was about everything that ID represented. And someone was about to find out just how costly disrespect could be. Vanessa sat in the waiting area, posture perfect, hands folded in her lap, but inside, she was burning. Minutes ticked by. The teller hadn't just embarrassed her. He had made her feel small. And not because she had done anything wrong, but because of who she was. A black woman walking into a financial institution, carrying quiet power, and still being treated like a threat. She watched him at the counter. He wasn't making any calls. He wasn't getting a manager. He was helping the next customer, laughing with them, as if she didn't even exist. She glanced at her phone. 10 minutes had passed. The silence around her wasn't just uncomfortable, it was loud. Other customers had noticed what happened. A few had whispered, but no one said anything. No one asked if she was okay. Because when you're a black woman in corporate America, you're expected to swallow disrespect and keep going. That's how you survive. But this was different. This was public. This was targeted. This was humiliating. Finally, a woman in business attire stepped out from a side office and walked toward her. She introduced herself as the assistant branch manager. Dr. Mitchell, she asked, reading from a clipboard. Yes, Vanessa replied. The woman glanced back toward the teller, then turned to Vanessa with a tight smile. We understand you're trying to authorize a transaction. Vanessa stood. Her voice was calm, measured. Yes, I provided my government ID and company documents, but your teller declined to complete the process, and then threw my identification on the floor. The manager blinked. Threw it. The manager's eyes flickered. Uncertainty, maybe even embarrassment. But still, there was no immediate apology. I apologize for the inconvenience, she said, clearly choosing her words carefully. Let's step into my office and get this resolved. Inconvenience? Vanessa thought. That's what we're calling it now. She followed the woman into a small, glass-walled office. It was modern, minimal, and designed to feel private, but Vanessa felt anything but safe. Once seated, the manager began asking basic questions. Her account number, company credentials, the reason for the transfer. Vanessa answered each one succinctly, handing over neatly organized documents from her briefcase. As a manager scanned them, Vanessa asked, does your teller have the authority to delay a transaction like this based on a visual judgment of an ID? The woman hesitated. Well, there are security protocols in place for large transactions. But he should have asked for manager support immediately. And what about tossing someone's ID on the ground? The room went still. The manager cleared her throat. That's certainly not appropriate. I'll be speaking to him. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. Speaking to him? The woman fumbled. Addressing it seriously. Of course. Vanessa gave a short nod. She knew the script. The awkward explanations, the corporate lingo. What she wouldn't get was a genuine acknowledgement of what had happened. A racist microaggression, made visible in broad daylight. Because here's the truth people don't talk about. It's not always about slurs. It's not always loud. Sometimes racism is quiet, polite, dismissive, subtle. Like a man refusing to see the CEO in front of him. Like a manager trying to smooth things over instead of taking accountability. Like an entire system built to protect people's comfort instead of someone's dignity. The manager processed the paperwork. Everything checks out. The funds will be released within the hour, she said. Vanessa stood, collected her items, and prepared to leave. As they reached the front door, the manager said, "Thank you for your patience, Dr. Mitchell." But Vanessa stopped. She turned and looked the woman directly in the eye. This wasn't about patience, she said. It was about professionalism, something your staff clearly needs more of. And then she walked out, head high, heels clicking, refusing to let the weight of that moment stay on her shoulders. But what no one in that bank realized was that the true cost of that microaggression was still coming. Because the teller didn't just drop her ID. He dropped something much bigger, the reputation of his bank. And Vanessa Mitchell wasn't going to forget that. Vanessa Mitchell stepped out of the bank and into the sunlight, but the warmth of the day couldn't touch her anymore. She paused on the sidewalk, eyes narrowing slightly behind her sunglasses, jaw tense. People passed by, chatting, smiling, walking dogs, completely unaware that a multi-billion-dollar storm was quietly brewing in the mind of the woman who stood motionless in front of the glass doors. Her assistant, Maya, spotted her through the windshield and stepped out of the black Escalade parked by the curb. "Is everything okay?" she asked, concerned by the look on Vanessa's face. There was a long pause before Vanessa spoke. Her voice was low and sharp. "They threw my ID on the floor. Pacing, calculating, reevaluating, rethinking everything." The irony stung. Just an hour earlier, she'd been celebrated at a corporate summit as one of the most influential black women in tech. Applause, cameras, press interviews. She had smiled graciously as executives shook her hand and praised her accomplishments. And now, a random bank teller had, in 10 seconds, reduced her to a threat. A fraud. A nobody. But this wasn't just about disrespect. It was about risk. Real, financial, strategic risk. The partnership deal she had spent over 2 years building was time-sensitive. International negotiations, legal teams across multiple time zones, tax consultants, compliance experts, everything had to align. The final wire transfer was symbolic, yes, but it also unlocked a massive integration phase between her firm and a European fintech giant. She had selected this particular bank for the final transfer because of their global presence and commitment to high-value clients. But now, that same bank had placed unnecessary suspicion on her identity and caused a critical delay. She looked down at her phone. There were 3 missed calls from Zurich and a message from her European counterpart. "All systems on standby. Please confirm funds received before 1 p.m. Central European Time. We must close before market opens." Vanessa checked the time. That was less than 2 hours away. Panic didn't rise in her chest. Not yet. She'd been in worse situations. But what made this worse was that it was so avoidable, so unnecessary, and so clearly fueled by bias. She called her COO. "Roger," she said the moment he picked up, "put the European side on pause. There's been a delay with the wire. Do not let them proceed with the rollout until I give the green light." "What happened?" Roger asked. "Bank issue," she said tightly, "and not a technical one." Roger didn't need more details. "Understood." She hung up. This deal had been more than just a financial win. It was a legacy move, a deal that would elevate her company to unicorn status. It would mean expansion into new markets, thousands of new jobs, and a game-changing technology rollout. It wasn't just her name on the line. It was her entire team, investors, and years of sacrifice. And now, because one bank employee saw a black woman and assumed the worst, everything teetered on the edge. Vanessa took a deep breath and pulled up the contract documents on her iPad. She scanned the fine print again. There was a clause 11.3, mutual respect and compliance in financial handling. It allowed either party to walk away if a breach of integrity occurred involving any critical service partner. Her fingers hovered above the screen. She could still save the deal. She could apologize for the delay, reissue the transfer through a different bank, and call it a minor hiccup. But something inside her resisted. Why should she fix a problem she didn't create? Why should she protect a system that didn't protect her? This wasn't just a clerical error or a software glitch. It was a reminder that no matter how powerful, how wealthy, or how successful she became, there were still rooms where she'd be treated like she didn't belong. And in this case, that room was a bank lobby. She turned to Maya and said, "Draft a message. Tell Zurich we'll need to reconsider the framework of our partnership, and that I'll be in touch after further internal review." Maya blinked. "You're delaying the whole deal?" Vanessa looked straight ahead. "No, I'm reevaluating everything, including who deserves to be in business with me. Because at the end of the day, what's the point of reaching the top if you have to lose your dignity on the way there? And that wire transfer? It could wait." By the time Vanessa reached her office, 23 floors above the city, she already knew what she was going to do. Her heels tapped across the polished hardwood as she entered the executive suite. Her assistant, Maya, followed closely behind, phone in hand, already updating their legal team and PR firm on standby. The panoramic windows behind Vanessa's desk offered a sweeping view of Atlanta. But she wasn't interested in the skyline today. She walked straight to her desk, opened her laptop, and pulled up the master agreement for the $2 billion partnership. Clause after clause detailed the responsibilities, the expectations, the timelines. It was everything she had worked toward for over 2 years. Yet something inside her told her to pause. Not out of fear, out of principle. She was used to fighting battles behind closed doors. Used to being the only black woman in the boardroom, the only one asked to prove her credentials twice, the one whose confidence was too often mistaken for arrogance. But this time she was tired. Not of the work, but of the pattern. She wasn't going to fight this one with press releases, hashtags, or viral outrage. She wasn't going to name names. She wasn't going to post a selfie with a caption about injustice. She was going to move differently. Vanessa picked up her phone and called the CEO of a European firm directly. "Hi, Anton," she said calmly. "We need to talk." He was surprised. "Is everything all right?" "We were just waiting for the confirmation." "There's been a complication," she said. "Not on our end, but with one of our financial partners." She explained briefly, leaving out dramatic detail, but making the message clear. She was disrespected, dismissed, undermined by the very bank that was supposed to facilitate one of the most important transactions of her career. Anton was silent for a moment. Then he spoke. "I'm shocked. Do you want us to step in or issue a formal letter?" Vanessa shook her head. "No, I want to handle this in my way." Quietly, Anton understood. Power like Vanessa's didn't always need a megaphone. Sometimes silence was the megaphone. After the call, she contacted her legal team. "I want to withdraw from the partnership," she said. "Not because the deal isn't valuable, but because I won't move forward on a foundation where I'm treated like a suspect instead of a leader." Her lawyer, stunned, replied, "Vanessa, that deal was historic. You're walking away from billions." Vanessa didn't flinch. "I know exactly what I'm walking away from, and what I'm walking into is even more valuable. Because this wasn't about money anymore. This was about the message she'd be sending to her team, to her industry, to every young black girl watching her journey. You don't have to accept disrespect in exchange for opportunity." Within 24 hours, the deal was off the table. Just like that, it was done. The international firm issued a quiet statement about strategic adjustments. No fingers were pointed publicly. No headlines were made. And yet, behind closed doors, people talked. Investors asked why such a massive partnership had suddenly evaporated. Industry insiders whispered about what had really happened. And in every retelling, the same truth emerged. A $2 billion deal didn't fall apart because of bad business. It ended because someone couldn't see the value of the person sitting across the counter. The bank? They didn't even know yet. A few days later, a manager from the branch called Vanessa's office, attempting to follow up on the transaction. Maya answered the phone. "I'm sorry," she said with calm authority. "The transaction is canceled. We've decided to take our business elsewhere." There was a pause on the other end. The caller tried to offer apologies, assurances, even a formal meeting to rebuild trust. But the answer remained the same. Because the thing about respect is, once it's lost, no wire transfer can buy it back. Vanessa never issued a public statement. She didn't need to. Her silence traveled through the corridors of power. In meetings, in emails, in conference calls, people mention her name with more weight now, not just as a tech innovator, but as a woman who knew her worth. In the following months, the bank quietly reviewed internal discrimination complaints, let go of the teller, and reshuffled regional leadership. But Vanessa never returned. She had moved on, not because she wasn't angry, but because her time, her energy, and her dignity were too valuable to spend on places that couldn't see her. And sometimes, the loudest resistance isn't in the shouting. It's in the choosing. Choosing silence. Choosing self-respect. Choosing to walk away when staying would mean shrinking. 3 weeks later, the letter arrived on the desk of the bank's regional CEO. It was professionally written, with no emotion between the lines, just facts. But the weight behind the words was unmistakable. It came from the office of Dr. Vanessa Mitchell, CEO of VM Technologies, one of the fastest-growing tech firms in North America. The letter outlined, in precise detail, the events of that morning inside their flagship downtown branch. The incident, the teller, the delay, the disrespect, and finally the fallout. Nowhere in the letter was there a demand for money. Vanessa didn't sue. She didn't ask for a settlement. She didn't threaten legal action. She didn't have to. Instead, the letter listed the value of the transaction that was meant to take place that day. It documented the timeline, the partnership deal, and the consequence of the delay, the dissolution of a $2 billion global agreement. It was a cold, hard number attached to a moment of thoughtless bias. And suddenly, what had seemed like a minor customer service issue became a monumental internal failure. A chain reaction set off by one person's inability to see the power standing in front of him. The teller was quietly let go. The branch manager was reassigned. A new round of diversity and inclusion training was mandated across the region. But nothing could undo the damage, because now Vanessa's name lived in whispers in corporate halls, not because of scandal, but because of the silent message she had delivered. Respect isn't optional, and silence can be stronger than outrage. Vanessa never spoke to the media. She never named the bank in public. She never posted a single tweet. But behind the scenes, she was the reason executives were scrambling to update their client protocol manuals. She was the reason a regional bank that prided itself on prestige was now quietly trying to repair its image, and all without raising her voice. Back at VM Technologies, her staff noticed something change in her. Not bitterness, not anger, but clarity. In a leadership meeting weeks after the ordeal, someone asked whether they should proceed with another financial institution for upcoming deals. Vanessa paused. Then she said, "We don't just need financial partners who can move money. We need partners who see our value before they see our bank account." It became a mantra in the company culture. And soon, it extended beyond finances. Job applicants were screened more carefully for inclusive values. Vendor relationships were evaluated for fairness and equity. Vanessa had always demanded excellence, but now she demanded alignment. Because the lesson that day in the bank lobby wasn't just about prejudice. It was about power, about who holds it, who recognizes it, and who dares to ignore it. That teller hadn't seen a CEO. He'd seen a black woman he didn't recognize. And in that split-second decision to drop her ID on the floor, he had also dropped the opportunity to be part of something historic. The greatest irony? That teller had no idea who he was serving. He had no idea that his small act of disrespect would echo up the chain to top executives and international investors. But Vanessa knew, and instead of fighting with press or lawsuits, she had done the one thing companies fear the most. She walked away and took the future with her. Months later, while attending another tech leadership summit, a young woman approached Vanessa during a break. "Dr. Mitchell," she said, her voice nervous but warm, "I just wanted to say thank you. I heard what happened, through quiet circles, of course, and I admire how you handled it. You didn't make noise. You made impact." Vanessa smiled. That's when she realized something. Her silence wasn't the absence of action. It was the presence of power. Because sometimes, you don't need to yell to be heard. You don't need to post to make a statement. Sometimes, the most profound protest is simply knowing your worth and refusing to explain it to people who've already decided you're not enough. Vanessa didn't just lose a deal that day. She made a decision to no longer tolerate partnerships that required her to dim her light or question her identity. Because in a world where deals are made and broken in boardrooms and bank vaults, self-respect is still the highest currency. And she had more than enough of it to build something even bigger.